Before we talk about Dishonored proper, we're going to have to preface the video by talking briefly about the in-game morality system known as Chaos. Chaos affects a variety of things, such as the total amount of hostile forces in a level, some minor aesthetic and gameplay changes, and most importantly for our purposes, the narrative beats of the last third of the story, as well as the endings of the game. Chaos is mostly established by how many humans are killed in a particular level, with a low amount leading to low chaos, effectively the good route, and a high amount leading to high chaos, the bad route. There are non-lethal options for every assassination, and it is indeed possible to play through the whole game without killing anyone. This is going to be on the test, so try to bear it in mind. Set in an industrial city inspired by 19th century England, Dishonored is the tale of Corvo, a bodyguard who couldn't do his one job and is subsequently framed for a royal assassination turned coup d'etat. After breaking out of prison with the help of a loyalist conspiracy, it is up to him to dispose and depose the new government officials and then the former allies who betrayed him in his journey to see the heir Emily Caldwin return to the throne, as well as regain his noble authority, all the while seeing if he is able to retain his moral authority. The game is thematically centered around ideas of death, nihilism, and the actions we choose to achieve our goals, but ultimately confuses itself through its peculiar moral implications. As a game about targeted assassinations, it follows rather naturally that the end of life and its inevitability would be a key concept. The city of Dunwall is overrun by a bubonic-adjacent rat plague that turns its victims into little more than violent, shambling corpses. In turn, the authoritarian government keeps what's left of the populace in line through uncaring security machines and lethal policing policies. It's a deadly cycle, a Fisher King scenario where the corruption of the government leads the land itself to suffer, and indeed when the deposed leader Corvo turns to violence, more rats and weepers appear, and the land decays further as an extension of his moral failings. Anything that breathes can be killed, from street thugs to civilians to your own allies to Emily. Whether by illness or by blade, nothing from the lowest rat to the highest empress is able to escape death. This is most notable in the assassinations themselves, where Corvo, a spirit of death in his own right, infiltrates the most secure buildings in the city to end the lives of those who are supposed to be the most protected. The mission at the Boyle estate appears to be a large allusion to Edgar Allan Poe's Masque of the Red Death, as it also revolves around a group of nobles at a masquerade party hiding from a deadly plague, and contains a similar conclusion. Dishonored offers you a plethora of ways to administer demise, and even encourages you to experiment with complicated ways to do it. It is perhaps because of the large prevalence of death within the narrative and the ability for it to be caused by the player that the morality system puts such a weird amount of emphasis on not killing people. Perhaps the idea is that in times as desperate as these, being spared, being allowed to evade death, even if only temporarily, is nothing short of a merciful miracle on the part of the player. Corvo is given mystical powers by the Outsider, a supposedly apathetic but mostly condescending figure who thinks you're pretty lame for caring about things.
He's not an easy man to get close to. If the Empress had been as well guarded, how different things would be now.
He exists within the void, a largely empty space haphazardly occupied with props, sort of like GM Flatgrass, but less depressing. The game implies that the Outsider is a nihilistic deity who bestows his mark, his mystical powers onto humans for his amusement, and that when all men inevitably perish and all civilizations crumble, they return to the nothingness of the void. This can be seen physically through the Shadow Kill ability, where NPCs killed will vaporize into thin air as if they had never existed at all. He is unswayed by rituals in his favor or condemnations from the Abbey of the Everyman, and it seems that the only reason that life exists is to be the playthings of one particularly snobbish doom poster.
But if he really wants to meet me, he could start by being a bit more interesting.
Therefore, the choice on the part of the player to kill or not can be seen as a rejection or an affirmation of the inherent value of human life, and whether the Outsider is meant to be agreed with. If Corvo kills a lot of people, it means that, yes, the Outsider is correct. Human life is ultimately without meaning or value, that they are but whispers in the void, so there should be no problem with him ending 1 or 100 in pursuit of his goals. By contrast, choosing not to kill, avoid conflict, or take special care in preserving life instead states that life does have intrinsic value, regardless of its original purpose or if there is an afterlife waiting for it. Corvo isn't exactly a pacifist. As we'll talk about later, some of the people he spared probably wish they were dead, but the idea seems to be that life is worth saving and living even under awful circumstances. It is, in a sense, a use of the outsider's own power to demonstrate that his ideas are wrong, if anything hypocritical, for if human life did not have value, what would be the stakes? What would be so amusing about watching one live or die? What would be the point in giving Corvo the option to decide the fate of others if that choice meant nothing? Indeed, at its core, the central theme of Dishonored is in the immortal words of Sammy Sonic Fan. That people are defined by the actions they make, and the world is defined by the effects of those actions. Corvo is not honorable or dishonorable because he has power, he is those things because of the way he chooses to use said power. The player can solve problems and traverse obstacles in an infinite amount of ways, using magic, using tools, traversing the alleyways, strolling down the main road, slitting someone's throat or tranquilizing them, but regardless of how they choose to go about it, that choice will have ramifications.
We make our choices and take what comes. And the rest is void.
This is where we return to the aforementioned chaos system, which is meant to enhance this theme, but in all honesty, is kind of overly simplistic and hollow. Chaos is most effective at displaying the direct fallout of a player's actions on subsequent playthroughs, which, while adding replay value, also makes it apparent that chaos doesn't meaningfully change the story very much until the latter third of the game. The way in which chaos is determined also creates a very odd framing of morality, like low chaos presents Corvo as a benevolent and merciful hero, whereas high chaos turns Corvo into an unsympathetic psychopath, but the only thing really separating these two modes is the amount of people killed in a level. Therefore, unless you actually manage to reach high chaos, it is difficult to see the consequences of your actions manifest. It is very possible to murder each and every one of your main targets, as well as some civilians, and then still have Samuel give you a compliment at the low chaos ending of the game, simply because you didn't reach the death quota.
Somehow you managed to get through all this mess without losing sight of what really matters.
This could actually be kind of poetic. Sometimes horrible people don't face any consequences for their actions, are lauded as heroes, and receive positions of power. But somehow I don't think that was the intent. Further, I feel like there's just some missing moral complexity. Even if the player chooses to not kill anyone, Corvo still has to do a lot of stealing, a lot of assault, and a lot of bad things in order to overthrow the government. After all, this revolution against tyranny isn't going to be won on hugs and handshakes. Like, the non-lethal solution to eliminating the Pendletons involves torturing an art dealer for the combination to his safe, so you can give it to a gang leader in exchange for him kidnapping said Pendletons and forcing them into slavery. And then their brother will reward you for being a cool dude. I feel as though the idea that Corvo and his allies, exploiting the city and deposing rulers for their own political benefit, being largely the same, if slightly more ethical, as the people they are trying to remove, deserves more discussion than can be provided by judging a kill count. The Knife of Dunwall and Brigmore Witches DLC handle chaos and morality a bit better, and by that I mean it has less of a presence overall. Unlike Corvo, whose origins are murky and depending on chaos will be displayed as good or bad, Dowd is a lifelong assassin, unambiguously bad and apathetic about it as well. He is under no illusions that he is redeemable, so whether Dowd is being awful in a lethal way or a non-lethal way, it doesn't feel incongruent for his character, which helps avoid the moral hang-ups found in the base game. I rather like that the endings don't really feel good or bad, but just neutral. Corvo killing Dowd is almost expected, a natural consequence of Dowd's actions from before the DLC even started, and a further demonstration of how choices have consequences. Corvo sparing Dowd is more mysterious. It doesn't feel like anything Dowd did led to this moment. Corvo doesn't know about the events of the DLC where Dowd saves Emily from having her body snatched. It's unclear why the choice has been made to bestow mercy to one of the most unforgivable men in the Empire, but a choice has been made.
I've learned that our choices always matter. To someone. Somewhere. And sooner or later, in ways we can't always fathom, the consequences come back to us.
It should not go unmentioned that the background elements of Dishonored are quite wonderful. The lore is a fascinating mixture of British imperialism and swashbuckling fantasy, the art style is wonderfully realized, and the symbolism is interesting. Rats are pests, tiny rodents that sneak through all crevices of the city of Dunwall and are gradually destroying it, eating corpses and people alive and spreading pestilence throughout. More rats appeared during the High Chaos route due to the abundance of corpses to feed upon, and indeed are representative of the way that Corvo and his allies slink through the shadows, spreading chaos, destruction, and death through the city like the plague itself. If it wasn't apparent enough, Corvo can summon and possess rats through his powers. Corvo's mechanical mask, a central image to the game, conveys the duality of Corvo's persona as well as the way personalities are concealed within the narrative.
The assassin's mask. You're a wanted man, so everyone in the city knows your face, but this mask will mean terror to them.
The mask represents terror, a killer, the wanted posters, the assassin and murderer of the Empress, while Corvo's bare face is an expression of the man, the reality, the wrongfully accused person underneath. There is an irony that Corvo wears the wretched mask, but is the one continually betrayed by others hiding their true intentions. The masquerade ball features a large amount of nobility in masks, meant to emphasize the way that beneath the fancy clothes and high etiquette is a group of upper-class individuals exploiting and hiding away from an imploding city built on the backs of the underclass. When facing the Lord Regent, Corvo has the option to remove or leave his mask, choosing whether to instill truth or fear into him. Most notably, near the end of the game, after the route of chaos has been firmly established, Emily will leave a drawing of Corvo in his bedroom. On low chaos this will be of his face, but on high chaos it will be a rendering of the mask, signaling that Corvo's personality has become one with that of the man on the wanted posters, that he and the violent assassin the public knows him for are one and the same. I don't have a solid conclusion for this video, but I can tell you what made me want to make it. By using the hard-on NPCs, you can hear their darkest secrets, usually pretty bad or even performatively evil stuff about how they competitively dropkick infants or something. To have a swift and easy punishment at your disposal, to know that to forgive may mean betrayal and risk to oneself, to know that there may be no consequences to your actions, to have gone through so much, and to still have the strength to choose mercy for people not worth saving. I think about that sometimes.